In this video, we're going to look at the third character in Theophrasus' characters. The third character is the Garrulous man, Garrulous. And we'll study the character, see what Theophrasus has to say, look a little bit at the details so that we can have a clear understanding of the character of the Garrulous man. And then we'll talk about what's harmful to us about garrulity, and we'll talk about how we can avoid practicing this vice ourselves and why we should watch out for it in others. So let's read about the garrulous man. Garrulity is an effusion of prolix and unpremeditated discourse. Garrulity is an effusion of prolix and unpremeditated discourse. Those are some important vocabulary words, and you should make sure that when you study Theophrasus' characters, that you take time to look these words up in the English dictionary. That's why we provide it for you. These stories or these lessons give you a good opportunity to learn a lot of new vocabulary, and you should make sure you take time to look it up. Garrulity is an effusion, a pouring forth of prolix and unpremeditated discourse. Discourse means speech. Unpremeditated means it's not thought of before it's spoken. And prolix speaks of an abundance. So garrulity, or garrulousness, is an effusion, a pouring out of an abundance and unpremeditated, not thought through speech, discourse. Just talking and talking and talking with nothing that's thought of beforehand, just whatever comes off the top of a person's head. They speak and they speak and they speak. That's garrulity. That's the garrulous man. So let's look a little more at the details of his character. The garrulous man, happening to sit beside one with whom he has no acquaintance. He sits beside a stranger. He has no relationship to the man. They don't know each other, and he starts talking. The garrulous man, happening to sit beside one with whom he has no acquaintance, begins by recounting the various excellences of his wife. Notice how the topics he speaks of just change from one to the next, to the next, to the next, and there's no relation between them. He's just babbling and babbling and babbling. So he sits down next to a stranger. The stranger doesn't ask him any questions, doesn't necessarily want to speak to him. And he starts talking. He talks about his wife. Then he says that last night he dreamed a dream, which he narrates at length. This leads him to mention one by one the dishes that were placed within his reach at supper. And by this time, his tongue has gained velocity. His tongue is now up to full speed. And he proceeds in a loftier strain. Alas, saith he, how much more depraved are the men of our times than were their ancestors. Now he's talking about morals. Then, and what a price has corn fallen to now in the markets. Now he's talking about money and finances. And how the city swarms with strangers. Now he's talking about immigration. And why are there so many foreigners in the city? By the time the bacchanalia are well over, the sea will be covered again with ships. Should it please heaven just now to send rain, it would be a vast benefit to the wheats. So you see, it's just topic to a different topic, to a different topic, to a different topic, on and on and on. as Theophrasus said, an effusion of prolix and unpremeditated discourse. Anon, he announces his determination to farm his own land the ensuing year. But how hard is it, says he, in these times to get a living? I must tell you, being, as I perceive, a stranger, that it was Demippus who displayed the largest torch in the late festival. By the by, can you tell me now how many pillars there are in the Odeum? Yesterday I was sick. What day of the month is this? This is the talk of the garrulous man. Now you may say, I don't even know what some of those topics are that he's talking about. Some of the things that you read, I don't even know what you're speaking about. And that's the point. The point of the garrulous man is that he just babbles and rambles on and on and on, talking about any topic that pops up in his head. And he's a nuisance to his neighbors, and it's a vice, this talkativeness. Now, what are the signs? What is a sign of the harmfulness of this vice? Notice one of the things that he said in the midst of his rambling. He said, how hard is it to get a living in these times? How hard is it to make a living? So one of the things he mentions is that he has a hard time earning a living. Well, we have one reason to know why he has a hard time making a living. It's because he spends his time talking and talking and talking. The other problem with this garrulous man is that he has no respect for other people. This stranger that he sits down next to, maybe he'd like to just have some quiet time to think by himself. Maybe he's got something on his mind. Maybe he's got problems he's dealing with today. And yet this garrulous man walks in or sits down and just starts selfishly talking and talking and talking just to hear himself. Talking and talking. It's selfish. It's irresponsible. And it has bad effects in our lives. Garrulousness or garrulity. So we see in this man a character that certainly is vicious, certainly is a character that we should avoid. I want to emphasize the selfishness of a talkative person. It just doesn't consider that other people may have things that they're thinking about, praying about, preparing for, and so on, and they may just want to be left alone. Being talkative is not necessarily a good thing, especially when others are not asking to be spoken to. So this garrulous man is a nuisance to his neighbors. He may be a burden to his family because he doesn't work. He spends all his time talking. He talks about so many different subjects as if he really has knowledge of all of these different subjects, whereas what a man should be doing, as St. James teaches us in the Bible, he teaches us that we should be slow to speak and quick to listen. Be slow to speak and quick to listen. When we consider how hard it is to know the truth, we should realize that we shouldn't have a whole lot to talk about because it's hard to know the truth. It's hard to speak truly. And that's why we need to be slow to speak and quick to listen. And a person who doesn't do that, but is constantly talking and never learning, never working, is a person who not only annoys his neighbors, but misleads people and can cause all kinds of trouble and confusion by his garrulity. So this is the character of the garrulous man. And while it's hard to avoid the garrulous man, because as we see here, he'll sit down right next to you and start talking. It's hard to avoid the garrulous man, but we should make sure that we are not the garrulous man. I hope that's helpful. God bless your studies.